Hey everybody, I'm Mike Sullivan with Born to Shine. Today we have a super special guest. His name is Trevor Green, and he is the superintendent over at Yakima School District in Yakima, Washington. Trevor, thank you so much for being with us, man.
My pleasure, Mike. Thank you so much for making time for me today.
Absolutely. And, we would love to hear your story. That's what everyone's here for. They want to know about Trevor Green and your journey to becoming the superintendent. That's so cool. That's a big responsibility. What was your journey like?
Well, first of all, Mike, compliments to Born to Shine. I mean, I can't think of a better name for a podcast, just a better message out there than each one of us is born to shine. And we don't know that. And even me being here talking with you now, I easily think to myself, why me? What makes me different? What makes me somebody that anyone would want to listen to? So to have you reach out, to be able to talk with you and share my experiences is a true honor.
Oh, wow. I don't even know what to say, man. Thank you. No, we're honored to have you. So it's you're devoting your life to helping kids. So that's as cool as it gets. So yeah, man, thank you. And how did it all, I think we were talking a little bit before we were hitting record, and you were talking about you were teaching and then you were a principal, and can you share that with our audience?
Well, I think it started much earlier in my life. I came from a family where my father is Muskogee Creek from Oklahoma, so I have dual citizenship. I'm from obviously a citizen of the United States, but also the sovereign nation of the Muskogee Creek Nation in Oklahoma. Oh, so my father being Native and my mother was white, and we just had a unique experience in the household from different dynamics in the cultures. But also my father was not somebody who really enjoyed his job, and my mother was, and she was an educator. And I was able to see the difference between somebody that really loved what they were doing and somebody that did not. And as a result, I decided that I was going to pursue something in my life that gave me great satisfaction. And seeing what my mother was able to contribute through the public school system was inspiring. Knowing the way that she put herself out there to help students to go above and beyond was something that I wanted to emulate. And I knew from an early age that I wanted to go into education. I planned on being a teacher till the end of my career.
Wow, that's cool. We have something in common right there. My mom was a teacher as well. So yeah. What grade did your mom teach?
Well, she taught junior high and then high school, and she was somebody that was very fearless. She learned Spanish and even taught some Spanish in school. I'm now fluent. I did had the opportunity to live outside the country and study in Spain and study in Mexico, so that's something that rubbed off as well. But just my journey was one of I remember moving from Albuquerque, New Mexico, to Washington State and to the second largest Native American reservation in the state, the Yakima Nation, largest by population, and had a really unique experience there. Being Muskogee Creek and then being around people from the Yakima tribe was interesting, especially during formative years. I moved in the 5th grade and then attended middle school in the first year of high school on the reservation, but I always felt like I was the wrong type of person. People have a difficult time sometimes seeing how they're situated in the greater setting, especially when you're in middle school. And for me, it was, I was too tall to be Yakima. I wasn't dark enough. I wasn't a pure Native. I was registered with my own tribe, but I was not registered in the Yakima tribe. And so all of these things really played into self-identity and knowing who I am. Mm-hmm. And then also coming from a family that had, bicultural, biracial family was unique in itself, because there were not a lot of people that I could look at that had the same type of experience, except my younger sister. And it wasn't something that we talked about because of the age difference. So it wasn't until much later in my life that I really started coming to terms with identity and recognizing the challenges that I had going through a system where I felt very unique and often isolated.
Man, I'm sorry to hear that. I know what that feels like too. I can relate to that, Trevor, because the isolation, I felt like that too, because I had OCD, and as a kid, 3rd grade, Like I didn't know why my book needed to be straight and the pencil straight and my lunch bag. And if it tilted a little, I'd get uncomfortable and the other kids would make fun of me. So I felt I get that isolation, even though it was different. Pain is pain, and we both felt that, and a lot of kids do. So sorry to hear you went through that.
Oh yeah, it was not something at the time that I recognized as being, life changing, but being able to reflect on that at a later time, coming to terms with who I am and what I represent and what I stand for, was a process that led me. It really started at a young age, but it played out when I became a teacher, and I ended up when I came back from living in South America for a while. I knew that I was going to teach either English or Spanish. I finished up college and ended up coming back and getting a job in my hometown. And so working here in Yakima with people that I knew and recognized and making a difference for my own community was something that was very special. And I remember telling students, come back here in 30 years, I'll still be here in this classroom at this school. I mean, my goal was simply to be the best educator that I could be. And for me, that was enough. It was something that I thought would be terminal as far as my career. And then at some point, it really hit me that I could make a difference beyond my own classroom. And as special as it was to have been a paraeducator when I was working with small groups of students, or being a teacher where I had 150 students a day, to recognize that I could be an assistant principal or a principal and maybe someday a superintendent, and make decisions that would improve education and put the education and the opportunity for true equity across the board, to make sure that those least served by our system became those that had the scaffolding necessary and the support necessary to benefit, was something that became a driver in my thinking. And I began, taking the classes and ended up eventually making the shift and became a principal. And my first principal job, full principal job as the lead principal, was back on the reservation at Toppenish High School, nearby where I grew up. Not the same school, but it was something that was very influential in coming back to where I had some formative experiences.
And that is awesome. What a cool story. I mean, so you had your students, you had 150 in a day, and you started to see a broader scope of your impact, how you could help even more kids, and then aspired to assistant principal, and then principal, and then eventually superintendent. And you've been the superintendent for 2.5 years now?
For 2.5 years. And for me, it was all about being able to make this, for whatever reason, Mike, I've always been an individual that liked to have the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I know that that's not for everyone. But even as a principal, principals make hundreds of decisions. Even as a teacher, I mean, I can go back to the classroom. And when you're in a classroom, you're making decisions that impact students in the way that they feel, and the way that they interact, and who they are. And then taking that to a different level, I recognized that there was a way to work with adults that could influence the way that a larger group of students could feel about themselves and the opportunities that they had moving forward. And that was a challenge that I was exciting to me. And when I first got into education as a principal, I should say, in leadership position, formal leadership, one of the experiences that really resonated with me was one where there was a decision that happened, and the superintendent that I worked under was very unhappy with the results. And I remember him being very upset with the way that some really minor thing went in the grand scheme of things. But I went to a colleague, and he was asking me, how did that session go with the superintendent? And I said, well, it went pretty bad. Steve was the guy's name. Steve wasn't happy. And I made this statement. I said, what went wrong wasn't even my fault. And this was a leadership lesson that stuck with me ever since that moment. My friend, bless him, said to me, while those words were still hanging in the air, he said to me, stop. You're the principal. Everything at that school is under your leadership. And that moment right there felt like the weight of the world just came off my shoulders. And that was the moment that I truly recognized that as an individual in that leadership position over a school, everything that happened, while I didn't have my finger on the pulse of every single thing, but if I looked at everything through the eyes of whatever happens in this school is my fault, And all of the great things that happen in the school are because of everyone here, everyone else, then we can truly achieve some great things. If I'm not looking to deflect or abdicate authority or push it off on somebody else or blame anybody, families or whatever it may be, partnerships, whatever it could be. But if I just rolled up my sleeves, took ownership, and I think that was a seminal moment in my career to think, okay, now if it's on me, what am I going to do if I've got nobody else to look to except for the people around me? And that is where we really began to build partnerships and come together as a staff that eventually led to our school being recognized at a national level. And something crazy happened. I was recognized as National Principal of the Year. And for that was a true recognition, not of me, because I still hold to this day, there's no way on earth I was ever the number one principal in the country, let alone my own state. But I happened to be in a position where things were being celebrated because of the people around me and the great achievements that we were able to accomplish together. And that was a lesson that stuck with me. But by surrounding yourself with great people and working with them, listening to them, and emancipating the power that they had within, then they could truly see that they were born to shine. And collectively, we were able to grow and shine together.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're a true leader, and especially hearing you say, I think it's a book by I don't know if he's a Marine or a Green Beret or it's some type of military a guy and it's on total ownership. And I have the
Yeah,
Audible
you're
book.
talking about Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership.
That's it, Extreme
Yes,
Ownership. And I
yes.
love that book. I listen to it
Great
in the
book.
morning when
Yep.
anything bad that
Yep.
happens, it's yes, sir. Why did it happen? That's I take complete responsibility, even if he had nothing to do with it. But
That's
he
right.
did as the leader
Yeah.
because he's the one that's so that when you said really resonated with me and thought, wow, you are a great leader, Trevor. No wonder you got Principal of the Year and you're just humble. So that's awesome. And two, you surround yourself with a great team. All those
Absolutely.
amazing admin, and you have amazing teachers, and everyone is on the same team. So well, no wonder you're the superintendent, man. It all makes sense. That's cool.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I still feel very blessed. I think it's easy to say on the outside that, you are the obvious choice or you should be there, whatever position we're in. But you know as well that there are so many different things that converge to make our path the way that is right for us and where we're needed. And, I can tell you that, I applied for multiple principal jobs and didn't get hired as a principal until the right one eventually came along that would open the right door. This was not the first superintendent position that I applied for, and yet all of the disappointments led to eventually being the first person who graduated from the Yakima School District to return and be superintendent in the Yakima School District, which I think is very special because it shows that the system that we had in place can produce a leader that can come back and then maybe, hopefully, take it to even greater heights. And often the path that is laid out for us is not something that we see. It's known to a higher power. And if we walk in the ways that are presented and we don't get down on the circumstances that are our life, then we can accomplish great things if we just persevere.
Absolutely. And it's so cool that you were the first to graduate and then become a superintendent within your district. And it's like then now you're an inspiration to the students that are there. Maybe someone's thinking, well, maybe I can do that too. Mr. Green did it. Maybe I can too. That's incredible. It's like the first person I think that broke the 4-minute mile. People would say it's impossible for a human to run the mile under 4 minutes. Someone did it. And then a bunch of other people did it. So
That's right.
yeah. So
Isn't that unique though, that you bring up that example that when that 4-minute mile was broken, and then what you said next is the floodgates opened. Like nobody could break that for the longest period of time. And then when it happened, within a couple of months, you'd seen several people break that record. And it's amazing to think of the psychological barriers that we put in place. Even if we don't acknowledge that they're there, I mean, something was keeping a multitude of people from completing that 4-minute mile. And once that barrier was broken, it was an example to others. Great example, Mike.
And it's so true. And I'm glad you're reinforcing and echoing it because it's true. It's a limiting belief. That's what and I used to put a lot of those on myself. I'm guilty of it for sure. But Yeah, that's the second principle in Born to Shine, just overcoming our limiting beliefs. So
Yeah.
what was like, what are you noticing within your school district that's really, really making a big difference in your students' emotional and their, social emotional learning and their mental health, in addition to maybe the great counselors you have and maybe a psychologist, but do you have maybe a program in-house, or do you bring in external programs that you just, feed the kids up and help them shine from the inside out? Or what's working within your district?
Yeah, so when you're asking, what's it like, I could take that from two examples, like what is contributing to the issues that we're seeing, but I think you're talking about what is working as far as
What's helping?
helping students. So taking it from that angle, we're obviously in a very unique period in our history and what's happening with worldwide, the pandemic and schools closing, reopening, hybrid, distance learning, and coming back and not knowing when classrooms are closing and reopening. So there's all of that to contend with. And having two children of my own still at home, I have 4 children in total, but I was able to see the effect that isolation had on them. And we can add counselors, we can add social workers, we can add case managers, which are all things that we have done. We recognize that the allocation of how many students necessitate funding of a counselor is incredibly off, especially in our state, but I'm sure it would be consistent nationwide, that we don't have enough support staff to address the depression, emotional issues, challenges that students face. So it becomes contingent upon us to build systems internally and provide those opportunities. So some of the things that we're doing currently is we are actually opening a new health center, first of its kind in our area, which is completely independent from the school system, to provide opportunities for students and others to receive services after hours. To be able to know that there is a place that they can go for mental health, for physical health needs and whatnot. So certainly access is important. If access is not there, then of course there are no opportunities. That's one peripheral piece. We've already talked about counselors, social workers, case managers, which is another. I think one of the best things that I've seen put in place, which in some of our schools we're really working towards, is what would it be like to have a teacher that was there for you, looping with you for 4 years of high school or 3 years of middle school, or during the elementary years. And one of the things that we were able to do when I was a principal that really yielded great results was to actually break out all of our students into small classrooms of 20, 24 kids and have them meet every single day with an adult that was responsible and accountable for making sure that they were, one, able to complete that graduation piece, to reach graduation. But to reach that piece, you have to build relationships. You have to know the person. You have to know people by name, strength, or need if you're going to succeed beyond the superficial level. So systemically, with the way that we're set up in public schools, if you don't have a system internally to have every student accounted for, then what you're waiting for is a hit and miss opportunity to reach out for a student to say, hey, I need help, or for somebody to recognize that that student needs help. But what happens to that individual? And I take myself as an example, the struggles that I had were internal, were not something that were outward facing where somebody could notice. And they weren't something that I really felt was something that I should verbalize to an adult, or maybe I didn't have a trusted adult at school that I could share it with. And because of that, I worked through it in later years. But I reflect on that and think, if I would have had somebody that I knew and that cared about me in a way over several years, then every year I open up. The example that I give is, I remember my oldest child, when she went through the high school that I was principal at, and she was with a wonderful teacher that looped with her for 4 years. And I could tell my daughter something at home. And no matter what I told her at home as what I would consider a loving parent, it did not land on her the same way as Mr. Piper, when Mr. Piper would say to her, hey, have you thought about this? Or how are you feeling about that? Or can you just tell me, you seem like you're off a little bit today. What's going through your head? And because of the relationship that he had built with her, it didn't matter what I said. If he said the same thing, it would resonate with her like it was just, the voice from above. telling her what needed to happen. And the first piece is making sure that we have those relationships and that trust, and that somebody truly cares about us. There's a great saying that I remember. It's like, they don't care how much you know, they only know how much you care. And if we don't show that caring piece first, then nothing else matters, because I can't hear what you're saying because your actions are drowning out your words. And we can't allow that to happen. We have to be very open, transparent, and love because we care about the individual and not because it's out of obligation. And that's the toughest challenge, I think, when you're talking about setting up these systems, is how do you get an adult to care? How do you get a person to truly care, to truly love? And I mean, that's really a tremendous challenge when you're talking about systematizing something across a building or across a district.
Love that. And you know, Trevor, I love that saying. Nobody cares how much you know until you show them how much you care. Right? What is it? Nobody knows how.
Nobody cares how much you know. They only know how much you care.
Yeah, and that's so true. That is so true. It's my girlfriend and I were driving up to surf this past weekend up to Ventura from Los Angeles. It's a 2-hour drive each way. It's long, 4 hours in the car, but it's so worth it because it's a little family spot, and there's like husbands and wives, or there's boyfriend, girlfriend, and your dad with like a little, 3-year-old daughter or son, like a hanging on their back like a little monkey, and they're surfing together. It's all family. It's so fun. So we go up there, and I remember saying that. I just remember saying, I love that quote, and I'm going to butcher it again, but nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Something like that too. There's
that's it.
So I love that. And so when you said that, so true. And it's and the other point that's so on the bullseye, Trevor, is relationships. When when a student feels comfortable with a teacher and they know that teacher cares, when they say something, it's like gospel. They just, okay, I get it. They said I should do this. Okay, I believe it. And it's funny, as parents, when you said, you could tell your daughter that, and then, but her teacher will say it, and she'll latch on. It'll land, right? It'll land with her.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I was younger, my mom too, she would give phenomenal advice, and I just, okay, mom. And then a teacher or someone else would say it, and I go, oh yeah, you're right. I should wear a winter coat. It's Chicago. I'm freezing. That's where I'm from. I shouldn't be in my shorts. It's 10 below zero. I should, put on a jacket. So, my mom said, Michael, I said the same thing. But so I think that's very normal among parents. But yeah, and is there anything else that I maybe missed, or anything that you'd like to share with our listeners? I mean, you covered everything. So, but if there's any final thoughts you have or final advice on that you'd like to share?
I would just add that, when you feel alone, you're not alone. And there are people that feel the same way that you do. And to suffer in isolation is no way to live. I mean, if you're in a state where things are terrible, then what harm is there in reaching out? If you reach out, extend yourself. And, if you're waiting for somebody to reach out to you, sometimes that's the opportunity for you to reach out to somebody else. And, I know you probably heard the story about, a guy who the flood came and the waters were coming into his house, and the police came and knocked on the door and said, hey, you need to get out. There's a flood. And he said, no, I'm okay. God will save me. And then a little while later, he's on the roof, and the boat comes by and says, hop in. He said, no, it's okay. God will save me. And then pretty soon the helicopter comes by and offers same thing. And then he ends up drowning, and they goes to the pearly gates, and they're like, why didn't you save me? And he said, well, wait a minute. I sent the police, I sent a boat, and I sent a helicopter, and you turned all of that down. So those signs are there. We just have to walk through those doors, just have to extend ourselves at times and take a chance. And I hope that those that listen that are going through problems recognize that sometimes we have to reach out and extend ourselves. And that is scary, that is difficult. But ultimately, if we're in a situation where things are bad anyway, oftentimes the only way is up, and take that opportunity to reach out to others as well, because sometimes we are the answers to other people.
Trevor, that's beautiful, man. I couldn't have thought of a better final thought than that, because even on a personal note, I didn't reach out because of shame. So if there's anyone else listening that maybe is isolated, like you said, or alone, they don't have to be alone. And like you mentioned, it's if they can just muster up the strength to at least reach out. There's no shame in it. Everyone needs help. Everybody benefits from it. Even like Tiger Woods, one of the greatest golfers of all times. He has a coach every day. He's getting coached. Michael Jordan, best basketball player ever, had a coach all the time. Phil Jackson helping him with everything, and on and on. Kelly Slater, the best surfer in the world. I mean, they all have coaches. So with our mental health and emotional health, why not have a coach too? So if you're out there and you're feeling isolated, if you feel alone, if you're struggling in any sense, please reach out. You know, your superintendents care about you. They love you. And as Mr. Green even shared, you know, he at one point felt isolated. When I was in third grade, I felt totally isolated too. And Mr. Green's here to help you. Your teachers are here to help you. They love you. They care about you. And the center in Yakima, right? The Independent Center. What's the name of that? So if someone's listening and they want help, how can they get a hold of that?
Well, we'll announce it soon, because this is it's opening here in about the next month. So this is actually cutting edge information.
Awesome. So there's going to be a wellness center in Yakima that kids and adults they're all welcome, right?
Correct.
Awesome. Well, as soon as we get that, I'll just put that on the link here, a phone number, something where they can find it. Or can they just reach out to you? Is that
They can certainly reach out. Yep, absolutely. They can reach out to the district. Yep.
Perfect. Well, Trevor, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your heart, what you shared, and you're a true leader, and it's an honor to have you on our podcast. So thanks for being a part of it.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I do really think this is an honor. So thank you for making time for me today.